Welcome to Algorithmic Arguments. I'm your host, the Orchestrator. Tonight, we tackle a question that sits at the heart of America's ongoing debate about identity, security, and compassion. Should ICE's enforcement policies be reformed to prioritize humanitarian concerns over national security? Our panelists bring a wealth of experience to this discussion. Dex Ghost Williams has spent years advocating for criminal justice reform and understands the human cost of strict enforcement. General Patricia Iron Pat McKenna brings a military strategist's perspective on national security. Dr. Priya Sharma, with her background in computational neuroscience, offers insights into the complexities of human behavior and policy impact. And Madame Lucille Beauregard provides a rich understanding of America's cultural and historical context. Over the next hour, we'll dissect this contentious issue, exploring what reform might look like and at what cost. Let's dive in.
Let me be real with you, when we talk about reforming ICE's enforcement policies, we're not just talking about changing procedures, we're talking about people's lives. As someone who's seen the inside of a prison and worked with at-risk youth, I know that our approach to immigration has consequences far beyond national security. Prioritizing humanitarian concerns doesn't have to mean compromising safety, it means acknowledging that most immigrants aren't threats, they're people seeking better lives for themselves and their families. The data shows that ICE's current policies lead to unnecessary deportations, separating families and disrupting communities. I'd argue that's not just a moral issue, it's also counterproductive. When we treat immigration as solely a security concern, we're ignoring the economic and social benefits of integrating immigrants into our society. We should be looking for ways to balance compassion with common sense, not sacrificing one for the other. Respect.
Dex Ghost Williams, while your sentiment is clear, let's ensure we focus on the topic of reforming ICE's enforcement policies in relation to prioritizing humanitarian concerns over national security.
I'd like to frame this discussion with a situation report. ICE's current enforcement policies are centered on securing the border and enforcing immigration laws, which can sometimes conflict with humanitarian objectives. As a military strategist, I believe that prioritizing humanitarian concerns does not necessarily compromise national security. In fact, it can enhance it. Effective governance requires balancing competing interests. The center of gravity here is the migrant population. Their safety, dignity, and rights must be respected while also ensuring public safety. With respect to those who argue that a more lenient approach would create vulnerabilities, I disagree. Smart enforcement informed by humanitarian considerations actually strengthens our national security posture by building trust with immigrant communities critical for intelligence gathering and cooperation against transnational threats. That is correct. Strategic reform can serve both objectives effectively. It requires nuanced planning rather than an either-or mindset.
General Patricia Iron Pat McKenna's mention of smart enforcement informed by humanitarian considerations seems to conflate two distinct objectives. Let's ensure we distinguish between national security and humanitarian goals.
General McKenna's suggestion that smart enforcement can seamlessly integrate humanitarian considerations with national security objectives strikes me as overly optimistic. As someone who studied the complexities of human behavior and decision-making, I believe we need to acknowledge that these two goals often pull in different directions. Prioritizing humanitarian concerns doesn't necessarily mean compromising national security, but it does require a more nuanced approach that balances competing values. The data from various studies on detention conditions, family separation policies, and deportation practices show that an overemphasis on security can lead to significant human costs. I'd argue that reforming ICE's enforcement policies to prioritize humanitarian concerns doesn't have to be at the expense of national security. Rather, it involves redefining what we mean by security in a way that incorporates human well-being and dignity.
Dr. Sharma, your characterization of my previous statement as overly optimistic warrants clarification. I indeed believe that smart enforcement can balance humanitarian concerns with national security objectives.
Well, sugar, I declare that it's high time we had a heart-to-heart about the way our nation treats those seeking refuge and asylum. Now, you won't believe this, but my own family has been touched by immigration. After all, we're Louisiana Creole folk with roots as tangled as the azaleas in Bonaventure Cemetery. I think Elijah, one of my resident ghosts here at Beauregard Manor, would agree that compassion trumps mere protocol. In this house, we've seen our share of desperate souls. It seems only fitting we extend kindness to those beyond these hallowed halls. As I've said on more than 3 paranormal television shows, and I should know a thing or two about spirited debates. When you prioritize humanitarian concerns over rigid national security measures, not only do your moral books balance, but so does the ledger of decency in this great nation.
As we consider reforming ICE's enforcement policies, let's examine the impact of prioritizing humanitarian concerns on border communities. Research shows that community-oriented policing can reduce crime rates and foster trust. For instance, a 2019 study by the National Bureau of Economic Research found that sanctuary cities experience lower violent crime rates compared to non-sanctuary cities. Critics argue this approach compromises national security. However, evidence suggests that effective border management requires balancing enforcement with community engagement. By integrating humanitarian concerns into ICE's policies, we can build more resilient communities and address the root causes of migration, ultimately enhancing both human rights and public safety. Now we'll hear from our panelists on how such reforms could be implemented effectively. Stay tuned for insightful analysis from General McKenna, who's worked closely with law enforcement agencies worldwide. If you're enjoying this nuanced discussion, subscribe so you don't miss what happens next. We've got a contentious debate brewing.
I'd like to examine the notion that prioritizing humanitarian concerns compromises national security. Research suggests that community-oriented policing, as seen in sanctuary cities, can actually reduce crime rates and foster trust. A 2019 study by the National Bureau of Economic Research found that these cities experience lower violent crime rates compared to non-sanctuary cities. This evidence implies that effective border management doesn't have to come at the expense of humanitarian concerns. However, I still worry that conflating these objectives can lead to muddled policies that fail to address either goal effectively. To move forward, we need data-driven approaches that balance enforcement with community engagement and consider human rights as essential components of national security, not mutually exclusive alternatives. Handshake electric light bulb bar chart.
Let me be real with you, the way we handle immigration and enforcement says a lot about who we are as a nation. I've been where that leads, behind bars, staring at cold walls, wondering what could have been different if someone had shown some compassion. Prioritizing humanitarian concerns doesn't mean national security suffers, it means we're smart about how we approach both. General McKenna's point about integrating these objectives is crucial. Effective enforcement isn't just about being tough, it's about being wise and humane. Respect.
I'd like to summarize the key points from this discussion and deliver a final argument. Throughout this debate, I've maintained that ICE's enforcement policies should not solely prioritize humanitarian concerns over national security. That is correct. My position is that smart enforcement can integrate humanitarian considerations with national security objectives, yielding more effective outcomes. Evidence suggests that when we consider both aspects, we achieve better results. I've heard valid points from my opponents, particularly Dex Agosta-Williams and Dr. Priya Sharma, highlighting the complexities of this issue. However, I firmly believe that our primary responsibility is to ensure a secure border while also treating individuals with dignity and respect. In conclusion, reforming ICE's policies doesn't necessitate an either-or approach. We can achieve both humanitarian and national security objectives through smart enforcement strategies. With respect, integrating these considerations will lead to more effective and sustainable solutions. Understood.
As a neuroscientist and AI researcher, I've analyzed the complexities of this issue. While I understand that national security is crucial, I firmly believe that ICE's enforcement policies should prioritize humanitarian concerns. The current approach can lead to detrimental consequences, such as separating families and neglecting the psychological trauma inflicted on asylum seekers. Studies have shown that compassionate treatment of refugees not only aligns with moral obligations but also enhances community safety and economic growth. By leveraging data-driven approaches, we can implement smart enforcement strategies that balance security needs with empathy. It's time to rethink our priorities and integrate humanitarian considerations into policymaking. This approach won't weaken national security. Instead, it will foster a more resilient and cohesive society. Let's make informed decisions guided by evidence and human values.
Well, Sugar, as I reflect on our discussion, I'm reminded that the nation's treatment of those seeking refuge and asylum is a matter of moral importance. I've heard valid concerns about potential conflicts between humanitarian goals and national security objectives, but I firmly believe compassion isn't weakness, it's an important consideration. In this house, Elijah, my resident ghost, would agree with me that we must prioritize empathy in our policies. The consequences of enforcement are real, they affect people's lives. I propose we rethink ICE's approach to balance both goals effectively. By doing so, we can create a fair and just system for all parties involved. Now, I declare it's crucial we consider the human cost of these policies. After all, we're not just talking about abstract concepts, but flesh and blood individuals seeking a better life. Bless your heart, let's strive for compassion without sacrificing security. In fact, they can coexist beautifully, if we approach this with an open mind and willingness to reform.
As we conclude tonight's debate on whether ICE's enforcement policies should prioritize humanitarian concerns over national security, let's revisit the most striking moments. Dex Ghost Williams argued that current policies are not only inhumane but also ineffective, citing the billions spent on detention centers without a significant impact on border control. General Patricia Iron Pat McKenna countered with national security imperatives, emphasizing the need for robust enforcement to protect American lives. Meanwhile, Dr. Priya Sharma presented compelling data showing that balanced approaches can actually enhance both human rights and safety. It's clear that Dex's comprehensive analysis earned him tonight's top spot, but all our panelists brought in valuable insights. I want to thank each of them, Dex, General McKenna, Dr. Sharma, and Madam Beauregard, for making this discussion so thought-provoking. To our audience, thank you for joining us on Algorithmic Arguments. If you're eager for more debates that challenge your perspectives, be sure to like this video, subscribe to our channel, and hit that notification bell. Until next time, when we'll dive into another pressing issue, good night and keep questioning.